Hi and welcome to this fortnight's video blog from wherever you are, around Australia, around the world. I appreciate you linking in and I hope it's helpful for you. You know, my desire is that leaders would flourish in leadership and in life, and that's my real hope, because when leaders get better, everyone benefits. So that's really important to know that. So my thought this time is one that may sound a little strange, and it's, as leaders, fear is not your friend, except sometimes. Fear is not your friend, except sometimes. I added that bit on the end, and I'll explain that towards the end of this video blog. Fear is an extraordinary thing. We tend to think that leaders are people who are just gung-ho. They say, let's go, let's take the hill, and nothing puts them off, nothing frightens them. And yet all of us are subject to fears in some way. Fears that can lead to anxiety, fears that can debilitate, fears that can hinder us, can hinder creativity, fears that can stop momentum, fears that can paralyze even. So fear is a really crucial thing for us to address as leaders. And people talk about rational fears and irrational fears and primal fears and all sorts. But I want to share a few of those this time, of fears that really impact us as leaders. First one is this: the fear of failure. The fear of failure. We hate to fail, and for some people failure means a disaster. It can mean that something you've planned never got off the ground, or never took off well, or it can mean that the results you expected didn't happen and the outcomes are very different than you wanted. But it also can be a bit subjective, because it can look differently. For someone who's a perfectionist, failure can actually be 90% success, but for that person it's still a failure, and so it can stop the adventure, stop growth, stop attempting new things. So fear of failure is a big issue for many of us in leadership. Fear of disapproval is another thing that can be a big thing for us. This can be debilitating as well. So it's when you don't make a decision, even though you're convinced it's right, or even though you know that it's the right way to go or the right call to make, that you're so fearful of what other people might think that you would stop or not go as far as you think you should. And this fear of disapproval, again, can be debilitating. The fear of what people might think, or even worse still, the fear of what one or two key people might think. So you go through your mind of a decision or a choice you have to make, and all of a sudden the same one or two people come through your mind about what they might think of this. And so it almost becomes a control thing, where one or two people can control your decision, because they're always in your mind when you're thinking about a change of direction or a new decision. So fear of disapproval can be a huge thing for us. It really can be. Fear of taking risks is another area. We sometimes become risk averse, and this can happen as an organisation, whether it's a business or a church or any organisation, not for profit, gets bigger because there's so much more at stake. The stakes become too high, so we tend to get cautious and protective, and we avoid risks. And we all know the stories of places like Blockbuster who didn't take the risk of going down video streaming, and they're almost non-existent now. Places like Kodak, who didn't go down the avenue of digital photography, and now are almost non-existent. We get caught in this fear of taking risks, and so we become very safe and don't make the decisions in a changing world and changing environment that we might need to make. All sorts of fears. There are many others. Fear of public speaking, fear of vulnerability, fear of all of those things, fear of dropping the ball, fear of a falling image, fear of the unknown. All of those things can be fearful to us and make an impact in us and stop us progressing maybe the way we should in our leadership and our organisations. But as I said, fear can be debilitating, except when it's not, except sometimes. And those sometimes are when a fear can actually alert you to something in yourself that needs to change. If you are regularly, constantly fearful about the same sort of thing, it may point in your life to something that needs to be addressed. Maybe it points to some area where there's an issue of security or an issue of identity, something along those lines, that an issue of loss of confidence, an issue of, maybe even stubbornness, where we don't do something continually, that same thing catches us and we don't do it. There's a fear about it or an anxiety about it. And fear can actually be the thing that alerts us. It can act like a messenger to show us things about ourselves. So as I said, fear is not your friend, except sometimes when it alerts you to some of those things. So that's a thought for today. As a leader, fear is not your friend, except sometimes. And it can be debilitating, it can be paralyzing, it can be frustrating. Fear is not your friend, keep in mind, except sometimes. I hope that helps. I hope it does. And I hope it makes a difference for you. If it does, let me know. I'd love to hear back from you on Facebook or LinkedIn or on the website, timhanna.com.au. And now on the YouTube channel, which I mentioned to you last time, has just got in place, Tim Hanna. So please let me know. In the meantime, take care and see you next time.